Financial Officer Tyler Beck. They have a presentation, and then they will save a few minutes for questions and answers at the end. And we'll turn it over to Dr. Oakley.
Thank you, and thanks for being here. I'm going to briefly give the highlights of the recommendation that was shared with our Board of Education last night. We're going to start with just a preview of the budget timeline. Again, last night we initially presented the budget to the Board of Education on April 8th. We'll hold the public hearing on the budget. The board could choose to vote at that time. The county manager will then present the county budget to the commissioners on May 15th, and you can see how that kind of plays out before we end up in June with the approved budgets and perhaps an interim budget depending on where the state sits. The purpose of the budget presentation is really just to talk more about how Guilford County Schools fuels economic growth here, and we're really how we define public education as the choice for defining excellence. And we are going to end with the draft of the 25-26 budget that includes the 25-26 local fund budget recommendation, and then finally the operating budget. So we'll be able to differentiate between those as we move on. When we think about workforce development and economic growth, it's important to understand how public education plays such a critical role there. We know we're not just institutions of learning, but we're engines that fuel the economic growth. We foster community development as a school system, and we're able to shape the future of our communities. And together we believe that we can do that to reach new levels of success. When we look at what excellence looks like, we do have a lot to celebrate here in Guilford County Schools. We have schools that are making a great deal of progress through learning recovery efforts, and they're gaining national attention. We are investing significantly in the well-being of students. We've launched new partnerships with employers like Toyota and Apple along workforce pipelines. We're in the process of consolidating central offices to improve efficiency and collaboration. And we know that we're going to have to continue to stay this course and be disciplined to continue to see results in the post-pandemic era. So when we think about what we can be the best at and what that means here, it's really about exceeding expectations and creating innovative programs that lead to a path for every individual student. It's about more than just test scores. While those are important, it's about making sure that we foster well-rounded individuals who are ready to lead in our community. And in Guilford County Schools, we've shown a commitment to accelerating learning and helping students recover from learning loss caused by the pandemic, and it's important to stay that course. We're really focused on the pathway to higher education or preparing students for the career of their choice. We have more than 60 innovative choice programs and opportunities for each learners, and continue to be relentless champions for success. We also have great neighborhood schools, which parents have told us is important, and supporting the whole child is just part of how we continue to maintain that. You'll see in the budget that our strategic direction focus areas are reflected very clearly through the budget recommendation. These are those 4 areas and you'll see kind of those designated priorities throughout as we talk about each piece of the budget recommendation. Of course, we talk about accelerating learning, making sure that no matter where students live, that they have access to a high-quality education. And then another thing we've been really focused on is enrollment. You may have seen some of the kindergarten enrollment strategies. We have some teams that have been analyzing research and developing strategies to think about these transition points. So what we heard from families is that the beginning of kindergarten, the transition from 5th to 6th grade, and the transition from 8th to 9th grade are these key critical points where students need to feel like they belong and be successful. So we've put a lot of focus on that area, and the result has been an intentional focus on making sure we have that positive outreach and begin to build those relationships with families. One exciting piece, we're already seeing some progress of that. In just the past week, we've already had more than 1,500 kindergartners register for kindergarten to start in the fall, and those numbers are continuing to climb. So we want to make sure that parents who will have children who will be 5 on or before August 31st are invited to go ahead and register. We've also been working with our 8th to 9th grade transition year and thinking about what we can do to support those transition points for our students who are entering high school. So high schools are seeing some success with those freshman academies, specifically for 9th graders, so we'll continue to pay attention to the benefits of that work. We know that schools are making academic progress, and we have to stay that course and continue doing what works. You can see some of those school highlights here. And in terms of the district, we're excited that the 23-24 cohort graduation rate was 92.2, which is the highest we've ever seen, and that many of those high school graduates are leaving us with college credits or CTE industry recognized credentials. The next focus area is really about non-academic support, so the physical health, the mental health, and the emotional well-being of our students, and we know that we'll need sustainable funding to be able to do this through initiatives like the learning hubs, the high-dosage tutoring, but also things like our touchless security scanners that lead to the strength and safety in our schools, and we'll talk a little bit about that in our budget request today. This is just a model that shows the access to care. It includes our health initiatives from nurses to telehealth to mental health services in our schools. And then when we shift from wellness to safety and security, another key measure here is the cameras that have been installed in every school that are maintained on our properties. We have more than 5,800 cameras with over 12,500 views, as you can see here. So administrators have way more extensive coverage of their campuses and can access that coverage more readily. We also have the scanners at every middle school and high school, and we're proud of the new centralized radio upgrades, so we're able to access on the 911 system. We'll have those for emergencies and more seamless communication when we think about what we can do for large pre-planned events or when emergencies arise in our buildings. The third is recruit, retain, and reward top talent. We talk a lot about how we keep great teachers in our schools and how we compensate our frontline workers, and so we know we can't do our work if we don't invest in people. You'll see a lot of that in the budget recommendation, but we know that our teachers and staff deserve salaries that allow them to provide for their own families, and with current inflation, that remains a challenge for many of our staff today. We know that teachers are the single most important factor in student achievement, and so we can't ignore that link, and that teacher supplements are a really important component that we have to address if we want to retain teachers here, because they can easily drive either direction on the interstate and earn a higher supplement. When we look at attrition rate, you can see that in North Carolina, teacher attrition refers to the number of teachers when they leave a school district and they don't move to another district in the state. So that would be teachers who exit the profession entirely, they retire, they move to a role outside of the state's public school system. This is from 22-23. We don't yet have the 2024 report, but it includes attrition rates that range from 6% in Camden County to 30.7% in Asheville City Schools. Our attrition rate here is 18.3% here in Guilford County Schools, which is higher than the state's attrition rate of 16.8, and it's higher than the other large districts except for Durham. This is because we've fallen behind with teacher supplement, and so we'll see that reflected also in the budget request. We've advocated for these increases to our local supplement last year. We've been working with our county commissioners to support our budget with a local supplement that's more competitive. But as we've asked to increase our local supplement, we've got other districts who are doing the same thing and trying to be the highest in the state. So we've continued to fall farther and farther behind, even though we're the third largest school district. So you'll see that reflected in the headlines, but also here, when you can see that we're the red line on the local teacher salary supplement. We're also one of 4 districts that's excluded from the state's $100 million teacher supplement fund. So our neighboring districts like Winston and Rockingham and Randolph, they all get the state $100 million teacher supplement, and we do not. So that's another thing that's making this competition for keeping great teachers here even more difficult. So you can see here that we were at the bottom for last year and again this year. So in the budget recommendation, you'll see that it includes a $10 million request to increase our local teacher supplement. When we look at our classified staff compensation plan, these are many of the employees that keep our school district running. We've also advocated for increases here. These are our non-instructional staff, our frontline workers. They also, with inflation, are having trouble keep taking care of their own families, often working second and third jobs. Market value is something we'll always chase in public education, but you can see here there's been a lot of discussion lately around HVAC and competition and how we could hire more facilities employees, but you can see how far behind we are. So we had an initial investment for our frontline staff in 23-24, but we're still significantly behind the market. So that far right column shows how far behind we are. For example, an HVAC employee with 30 years of experience would be making $9 less per hour than they may be able to make in the private industry. So that's something that we have to continue to keep in front of voters and the community. So the classified staff compensation plan is included in the recommendation for $15.3 million to implement the second half of this, and that would create consistent differences between grades and steps and raise pay rate to get closer to that market value that we just looked at. Lastly, we talk a lot about how we prepare students for the world. We really want to make sure that students know what their pathway is and can access that for employment, enrichment, entrepreneurship, or enlistment, and we know that our school bonds are helping us do that. It's helping us create the ways to meet our students' need for their own future. And when we get to those end products, as many of you have seen at the new schools, we're very proud of them, but they do take time. Here you can see the growing need for community involvement and partnerships in education to help address the challenges that are facing our school districts. We are fortunate to have many people who have stood up to help us fund programs that we know are working and that students are taking advantage of. Career and technical education is really soaring. Our students are taking advantage of the opportunity to take college courses while they're still in high school. You can see those numbers here. In Guilford County schools, we were able to increase our dual college enrollment by 46%, while the state only increased by 12%, giving our students a competitive advantage. They also took more than 10,000 college courses this past school year. So important to know that in addition to the 263% increase in industry recognized credentials, really is putting students on a pathway for success when they leave the high school graduation. We're continually trying to get better at this and to provide students with opportunities so that even our youngest students in elementary school can have the opportunity to explore careers and expand on those CTE offerings as they enter middle and high school. The goal here is for elementary students to be exposed, middle schools to be able to explore careers, and then for our high school students to be able to experience both careers and college while they're still here in Guilford County schools. When we look at student enrollment, we talked about this a little bit at our last board meeting, but just like all the other districts our size in the country, we're seeing these downward trends in public school enrollment and increases in charter school enrollment, which has a pretty significant impact on our budget, which you'll see. Since 18-19, enrollment declined from about 71,000 students to 66,000 students, and it's important to know that charter school enrollment increased from over 7,000 students to over 11,000 students in Guilford County. I'll now turn it over to Mr. Beck.
Thank you, Dr. Oakley. Now let's look ahead at the 25-26 superintendent's budget recommendation.
Sorry, here you go.
First, we are looking at the local and capital budgets in the detail here because this is what we will request from the county. Following the local and capital request, we will take a time to look through the state, federal grants, and the total budget in its totality. Here you can see the estimated mandatory cost increases for 25-26 school year. Growth in the charter school numbers and enrollment include both the projected increases for charter growth as well as if increases in revenue were to be received, the per pupil share that would need to be passed through to charter schools that would increase our requested amount. Salary and benefit rates, as you can see, for the 24-25 year are based on House Bill 259 in the prior biennium, and as our legislators move through, we look at a consistent increase in both benefit rates as well. In summary, you will see that we will need $6.3 million for legislative salary and benefit increases, but $1.7 million for utility and insurance, and $2.6 million in charter schools, including both the growth and the per pupil amounts for all charter school students, bringing that total to 10.6 in mandatory increases. One thing to remember is Guilford County Schools has approximately 14.9 cents on a dollar that will be passed through to charter schools. Next, we'll look at the annual cost for safety and securities. safety and security. Recall that in 23 and 24, 24 and 25, we were able to use ESSER funds to cover annual subscription costs and safety and security measures. Unfortunately, for the 25-26 school year, ESSER funds will not be able to be applied for the continuation of subscriptions, and that total will be around $3.6 million. Here, we have the cost of increasing both the local teacher supplement and implementing the classified salary plan phase 2 for a total of $29.7 million. We also are advocating at the state level for school-based staff to be included in the state teacher supplement. This is a summary of the estimated request for the 25-26 year. We start with the legally required and sustaining operations of $10.6 million, safety and security of $3.6 million, and compensation for $29.7, with a total of $43.9 million in estimated increases for the 25-26 year. Within this request, a total of $7.5 million will be transferred to charter schools. When this is added to when the $43.9 million is requested is added to the county appropriations from 24-25 that we will receive, we are requesting a total appropriation from the county of $314 million, which is a 16.2% increase from current year. While we have made tremendous progress on the capital improvement program with the use of bond funds, there are certain scopes of work which bond funds are not able or eligible to be used that impact critical operating or that are impactful to the criticality of operating safe, healthy, and conducive learning and teaching environments. For example, we've spent $9 million to date in HVAC repairs as of February that are not full system or major component replacements, but were critical to continuing school operations. Additionally, the district has other capital needs such as capital or equipment, vehicle replacements, which bond funds are not an option or allowable. We need to maintain and repair our facilities in a manner that does not lead to an enormous deferred capital backlog. Our employees need equipment and facilities that allow them to carry out their duties in a safe, productive manner so that our students thrive academically, and our capital outlay request brings us closer to realizing that operation. Now we will share the total operating budget requests that include both the state, local, and federal combined. As we may note, the state legislature is continuing their biennium budget process. We used 24-25 allotment projections, and you can see that our total projected is $495 million coming from state funds, and this is based on an ADM projection of 66,142 provided of daily membership. Our local funds in total, we will request $314 million, which was the $43.8 million request increase from the county. But as a total local budget, we will look at $318.3 million, which includes $3 million of fines and forfeitures and $1.3 million in investment income. Our federal grants fund is based on 24-25 federal allotments, because the 25-26 allotments, planning allotments, have yet to be distributed, and with a carryover amount for the current year projection of $54.5 million. And revisions for actual carryover and allotments will be incorporated into the budget as they are available. As a summary of how we spend our money in Guilford County Schools, you can obviously see by the graph that the majority of our funding supports our employees' compensation and related benefits in the total 81.7%. Purchase services as contracted services, utilities, and insurance account for 8.4%, supply materials 4.3%, and transfer accounts to approximately 5.5% of the overall budget. As a reminder, the transfer account is so high because that is where we transfer to charter schools. Our total recommendation from the 25-26 budget in comparison to the 24-25 budget, we have $495 million projected in state fund. The local current expense fund includes the county appropriation totals to $318.3, the federal grants fund of $54.5 million, capital outlay request of $10.8, child nutrition in a total of $52.6, as well as ACES fund and 6.1 million in special revenue fund, rounding out a total of 947.2 million requests in our total budget. As we summarize the next steps in the budget process, you can see last night we presented the superintendent's budget on the March 11th. We will have public hearing at the April 8th meeting, as well as the county manager will present his total budget in the May 15th county commissioners meeting. So I will turn it back over to Dr. Oakley to round out.
Thank you. So as we look forward, again, each of these buckets is really reflected in the budget request. We believe these are what will continue us to move forward. We're talking about not just how we invest in our schools, but also in our staff and how that's directly linked to the economic growth that has occurred and will continue to occur in our community. The funding we're requesting is proposed to help us accelerate learning, pay our hardworking staff a living wage to meet our legislatively mandated requirements, maintain safety and security, and then sustain our operations, which you saw in the progress. And while we've made a great deal of progress, we still have a ways to go to continue that work, which is what framed this year's budget priority. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
So I know y'all talked a lot about the teacher supplements. Kind of walk me through just how important it is to increase those, and how do those compare to Winston and our surrounding counties?
So when you compare us to our peer districts, and you can find that chart in the materials, we're the red line, so we're the bottom when you compare us to our peer districts. And so what that means is, even though a teacher may live here, it's an 8-minute drive, 10-minute drive to go to a peer district that may be included in that state funding formula and pay a higher supplement than we do. And so we're falling farther behind. So I think when we look at teacher attrition and knowing that the teacher is the single most critical factor in student achievement, that's something that we really have to pay attention to.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there was any mention of high dosage tutoring in this budget. Is that not something you're going to request funds from the county for?
So we have put that in our legislative agenda. We're continuing to work with philanthropic partners. We will also use some of our federal funds to continue tutoring to the fullest extent possible. But when we had to prioritize, we put forth the compensation, the acceleration of learning, and those safety and security measures.
So I know there's $8 million here for the HVAC emergency replacements. I know we've had some issues with HVAC in the past. Walk me through just how important that funding is, and I guess what sort of, if it has any long-term impacts on the HVAC systems in the schools.
You want to answer it?
Excuse me, that funding is critically important for us to keep our doors open. Anytime that our HVAC systems are down, we sometimes have to go to remote learning. And while that still keeps our students connected with our staff and receiving instruction, we know that being in person and learning is the best way for our students to learn. And so we spent that funding because we know that we have to keep our school doors open so that our kids can receive that accelerated learning that Dr. Oakley spoke about.
I think it's also important to note that some repairs aren't covered with bond funds. So when you're repairing a piece of a system, that's not bond eligible. So we have to have some of that flexibility to be able to make those emergency repairs when we get a call in the middle of the night or first thing in the morning that something's gone down.
We've been hearing some complaints from parents recently about the aging infrastructure at Page High School. Is there anything in this budget that specifically addresses Page High School?
So what is in this last round of deferred maintenance are projects specific to Page. Do you want to talk about what those are?
So right now, we have a renovation project of the auditorium at Page, which has been closed for a couple of years now, as well as renovations and additional bathrooms being added at Page, as well as a renovation at the media center. But as Dr. Oakley spoke about, what's included in this budget are funds that will allow us to make those major repairs to schools throughout the district.
So salary increases are kind of based on the projection of what the biennium budget would be. If those increases aren't what you guys expected, how would that throw off this budget?
I think with any budget, you have to have a starting point, and so that's where we've calculated based on some type of comparison. If that money were not to be fully exhausted, obviously, there will be other areas to transition to that would be able to fulfill the request, and obviously, the budget recommendation, if it was funded by the county in full totality, it would be able to help address any needs if it wasn't.
And obviously this year is the end of ESSER funding. Is there a fear that that's going to have to change your plans for the future in terms of where money is going to be going for certain things in the budget?
We really took that biggest hit this year. So it was actually September where those funds were. So we have operated the majority of this academic year without them. We did a very good job of expending those funds, and we prioritized what we thought was most important to continue. So we knew that cliff was coming. We planned for that cliff, but the things like the tutoring that we've had to continue at a smaller scale have been where we really feel and will continue to feel that impact. I will say the one thing you see in this budget is the $3 million for safety and security. We were able to pay that through the 24-25 school year with those federal dollars. So that ask in this budget is specific to the ending of that allowability.
So there's been a lot of talk about dismantling the Department of Education. What programs, initiatives are covered by that federal funding, and did that change y'all's approach to this budget at all, with those talks ongoing?
So I think we have to pay attention to what's happened and what hasn't happened yet, and we're certainly keeping our ear to the ground. We know that there were cuts to the federal department as recently as yesterday evening. Programs that come federally include most of our special education funding, school meals, when you think about how we feed kids every day, also some specific grants. So to date, the biggest piece that we have felt is around teacher pipeline programs and partnerships with other university grants, but nothing else has happened that's impacted like a position or a program. But we are paying close attention because we know we have to feed kids every day. We're doing a really good job of that here. And of course, special education services, which our students have a constitutional right to.
There is a bill, unfortunately, I don't have the exact number with me right now, but that is asking a committee to research the 5 largest districts in North Carolina and determine if the effects on, the students attending a large district and whether or not if they need to be split up. Does this sound familiar?
Yes, I know what you're talking
about. Can I just get your comments and just your thoughts on this bill?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not unlike the 4 districts who don't receive the state teacher supplement, right? It's some concerted effort to look at what large districts are doing. I think anyone, though, that can do math would understand the efficiencies that we have because we are a larger school district. So we wouldn't be able to do things like choice programs. We wouldn't be able to do things like transport students across the county. We wouldn't be able to do things like have that community eligibility provision at scale for 110 schools. So I think anyone who takes like a simple look would know that we would reduce our efficiencies if we were to break into smaller scale. We're able to do some things here because of our size, but we'll see what the study shows.
One other thing is there's another bill asking for money to transport seniors and juniors to GTCC for classes. I wanted to ask, how many students do you have taking classes at GTCC on average? And do they currently have transportation, or how are they getting there? Is it students driving themselves, parents, that kind of thing?
Yeah, this one is very exciting for our community, I think. We currently have about 2,000 students who are able to access those classes, but they do have to provide, in most cases, their own transportation. So the city of Greensboro, our legislative delegation, and the community college are starting to recognize how valuable this is. Students can really begin taking college courses their junior year and could earn 12 college credits, an industry credential, both. And then when they go to a four-year program, if that's what they're going to do, we need to think about how much less debt they'll have. These programs are free. And so we're thinking about how to make sure more students have that access and that opportunity. And we're well positioned to do that here because we have the 3 GTCC campuses, and we have community support to be able to navigate the barriers that currently exist. But the students who are accessing that now mostly do that because they're able to provide their own transportation. Yes, we have been talking about what a game changer this could be. People keep coming to us and saying, how can we employ your students? We need you guys to be the talent pipeline because of the workforce development needs, and I think this is the answer to that problem.
And with that, we have ended this news conference.